Earlier this month, the Sorel Classics label released a wonderful CD called The Flower of France, featuring the piano music of French composer Germaine Tailleferre as performed by the fantastic Vietnamese American pianist Quynh Nguyen. This recording features rarely, if ever, heard piano pieces written by a composer who is often unjustly overlooked. Germaine Tailleferre was a member of the group of composers known as Les Six, the other members of the illustrious group being Francis Poulenc, Arthur Honegger, Georges Auric, Darius Milhaud, and Louis Duret. She was friends with the likes of Charlie Chaplin, Jean Cocteau, Maurice Ravel, Eric Satie, and ballet impresario Sergei Diaghilev, and essentially was a fixture on the vibrant French artistic scene. Pianist Quynh Nguyen is a graduate of the Juilliard School and Mannes College of Music. She received her doctorate of musical arts degree from City University of New York, where her dissertation was on the music of Olivier Messiaen. She is currently on the piano faculty at Hunter College at City University, New York, and joining me here virtually over Zoom to talk about her recording, The Flower of France, I am joined by Quynh Nguyen. Hey, Quynh, it's nice to meet you here over Zoom.
It's very nice meeting you as well. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. I first want to start out the conversation by asking how you discovered Tailleferre's music. Was it through sort of remotely through Messiaen's music? And also, what is it about Germaine Tailleferre's music that you find particularly attractive and enjoy playing?
Yes, so actually, I my family has always had connection to the French culture and music, and I actually grew up in Hanoi, which is a city that is filled with architecture and culture um, of the French influences. And I my interest was fueled actually when I received the Fulbright to study in Paris with Olivier Messiaen, and I've always loved, the music of Debussy and Ravel and Messiaen also. But when I discovered the music of Tailleferre, it was just by chance because I had always loved French music so much. But then when I heard her music, just by chance online, I I was so kind of just fell in love with the inventiveness of the music, and I was so surprised to hear how such gorgeous music I had never discovered before. I have to admit that I was not exposed to her music in conservatories or in prior settings, and so when I heard her music, which was kind of like a cross between Chopin and Debussy with influences of Satie,
Mm,
with some popular colors as well. Having lived French music for so long, I thought it was just incredibly beautiful. And it was unique as well because it was just, she had such a masterful way of making the music sound really lush and gorgeous, like in the French style of the impressionistic composers like Ravel and Debussy. But then she also has such a beautiful romanticism in there, as well as elements of popular music from like the French Parisian cafes or just from popular songs.
right, right.
Yeah, I was just I just fell in love with her music the first time I heard it. The first piece that I actually heard was the Ballade for Piano and Orchestra, and then I started digging around and trying to look for more of her music. And I found
Mm,
that she had written so much music for the piano, in fact, because she was herself a very good pianist.
mm.
And her music was short, sort of influenced by Satie, in that there's in the solo works are mostly short works, but they're incredibly beautiful and
Hmm.
alluring.
It sort of leads to my next question. I mean, some of the majority of the music on the CD is obscure, like it's stuff nobody's ever heard of. Where did you find the manuscripts for these wonderful miniatures? Like,
So that's a great question. I did do I did try to find her scores, and I discovered in my process that a lot of her scores were, in fact, have not been published yet. Some were lost during the war, the World War II,
Mhm.
and some were have not been released to the public yet. Some recently have been released, and it did take me quite bit of effort in my research. I reached out to Paul Wahash, who was a friend of Tailleferre while she was alive, and who is now a really wonderful supporter of her music. And he had made a lot of great advice and gave me a lot of guidance as well, as to how to find her music. But it's true that many of these pieces, especially the pieces that she wrote for the film scores, and some of the pieces that she wrote for the ballets, have not been performed and recorded as much. I have not heard of them before, and I couldn't find recordings of them. And so I was very, very fascinated with her music, and it's the music that I actually play on this disc have been published. They're just
Ah,
not. There have not been. Many of them have not been programmed as much as some of her other contemporaries, like Poulenc or Mio or
yeah.
Satie,
Mhm.
had their music. And so yeah, I that actually fueled my interest even more to because it's such gorgeous gems that
Yeah,
she
right.
wrote deserve a lot more enjoyment.
Mhm. And she was sort of a really fascinating person. She lived a long life. She lived to be 91. She was married twice. Neither of the marriages worked out very well. She spent the Second World War in the United States and then moved back
Right.
to France. She was incredibly headstrong about her music, despite being very self-effacing. And I read somewhere actually that she actually suffered very bad stage fright when you were learning about her. Was there anything that you learned about her and her personality that made you go, wow, this is really crazy?
Yes, many things drew me to her music, but one of the things that fascinated me the most about her life was how difficult she had it
Yes.
throughout her entire career, to just do what she loved so much. So, in fact, she learned music from her mother, who was a pianist herself, and she had to hide her piano studies from her father, who was so against it that when she got admitted to the Paris Conservatory, she hid all of her piano studies from her father, and then got admitted to the Paris Conservatory. And when her father found out, he pulled her out and put her in a convent. And she had to stay there for a few years, and then she was able to go back to the Paris Conservatory, and her father had allowed her that time, but then stopped all support. And so she had to teach and work in order to continue her studies. And while at the Paris Conservatory, she won many prizes, and she had such wonderful support from her teachers and professors, from Satie, who thought that when he heard her music, thought she wrote such wonderful music that he thought that she was. He called her his musical daughter. She got wonderful support from Ravel, who encouraged
Yes.
her and mentored her for many years. And so yeah, and she had wonderful reception for her music, but then uh, her life in music continued to be difficult. She got married, and she got married twice, and both, as you said, both of her husbands were not supportive. One of them poured ink on her manuscripts out of jealousy, and the other, unfortunately, beat her and her daughter. And she said to me that her personal life, was incredibly hard, and that she composed music to escape. She composed gorgeous, beautiful music as a way to escape from the hardship of her life. And like you said, she composed for many, many years, all the way up until the very last few years of her life. And she continued to work, and she continued to write music and perform and play, to support herself.
Mm.
And that determination and that passionate love for her music, despite all these, hardships that she encountered, was one of the things that made me just really move me so much. Especially, as a mother myself, and going through also the pandemic and all that, and I understand how hard it is to do music and to actually pursue what you love, while making a living
Mm.
in music. And her music is just incredibly gorgeous. And this, except for some songs that she wrote that had lyrics that address some of these difficulties that she had, a lot of her music are just gorgeous, romantic,
Yeah.
beautiful pieces.
Absolutely. The title of the CD is called The Flower of France, and the name of the CD comes from this 8 little movement piano cycle of the same name. Can you talk about that cycle a bit? Was it music written for children to perform, or was it music for children to simply listen to?
That's a very good question. So I love that suite, by the way, the Flower of France. She gave them beautiful romantic titles, and they were simple. I believe that there are for children to play as well as to enjoy. They are
Mm.
simple and short pieces. They are sort of neoclassical in the sense that they have simple binary or ternary forms, and they have gorgeous harmonies with interesting harmonic twists to them. And so they're, even though in the Baroque form, they sound a little bit like Satie and Debussy influence, with simple melodic lines, and
Yeah.
the technique that's required to play those pieces, I believe that are not too difficult. They're quite simple technically, but melodically, lyrically, and musically, they're gorgeous pieces. And I
Yeah.
love the titles that she gave them, because she gave them titles of flowers that represent different regions of France. And so one is called the rose, the other sunflower, jasmine,
Yeah.
blue flowers, and so they're really evocative of these different regions, and you can just imagine or dream about the places that she's been to, and kind of perhaps thought about when she wrote these pieces. They're just
Yeah.
imaginative and dreamy.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cycle. One of the other things I didn't realize until I started prepping for the interview was exactly how prolific she was. I didn't realize that she wrote so much music for film and in television, if I understand correctly. And you actually play some of the film music on the CD. There's this piece, Shen, or Dogs, and then there's also music from this documentary, Seahawk. My first question is, was the music just written for piano, or had she originally written it for another kind of an ensemble?
Yes, that's a great question. So, being a very wonderful pianist herself, she composes at the piano. So, I, from what I've learned about her, she seems to compose everything at the piano and then orchestrate them later, even for her other pieces like her operas and her ballets, and
Mm.
certainly film music. I heard from Paul Wahash, the same person who guided me in my research, that many of these manuscripts exist first in the piano form. And so when I play these pieces, they are in that original version that is written for the piano.
Yeah.
And in fact, they are very wonderful pieces, performance pieces on their own. They're not just, transcription of things that she had made before for other forms, but actually she wrote them first for the piano, and by themselves they exist wonderfully as concert pieces as well as pieces to enjoy and listen to.
They're just great. One of the other things I find really great about the disc is it consists of 40 tracks, but it spans her earliest piece, the impromptu written in 1912, all the way up to this funny little piece called Monkey Business that was written
Yeah.
in 1975. Um, What is the biggest thing that you noticed from her early piano music to her late piano music on the CD? Compositionally, what was the biggest thing that sort of changed that you saw evolve?
That's a great question. So at the beginning, when she was very young in her 20s and she was still a student at the conservatory, that first piece that she wrote was during her early years at the conservatory. You can hear the influence of Chopin, certainly the romanticism of Chopin and Fauré and the colors of Debussy and Ravel. So I feel
Mm,
like she was more influenced by the impressionistic as well as the romantic periods in her early years. And then as she later on in her career, her music started to have more um, interesting twists of harmonic twists that she would add. Perhaps she would play with bitonality or polytonality in her music, and she also used neoclassical forms. Stravinsky had kind of like was a pioneer at the time in using neoclassical form, and she knew him personally as well, and so she used Baroque forms in her music quite a bit. Like one of the pieces is called Partita, which is a Baroque form, and other pieces as well, a minuet, and she uses Baroque type of harmonies with interesting harmonic twists on top that's playing kind of between different keys as well as different major and minor colors.
right. So you've recorded the CD and it's made up of all miniatures. She did write for the piano in larger forms. I'm thinking here in particular the two piano concertos, and there's also the concerto for piano and flute and string orchestra. Has discovering this piano miniature music of Tailleferre, are you interested in studying any of the larger pieces, such as the concertos?
Oh my goodness, I absolutely adore the Ballad for Piano and Orchestra. I love that piece so much. And I have actually started learning it as well as the first piano concerto. I've listened to the concerto for two pianos and orchestra, and I also have heard from Paul Wehash as well as Robert Shapiro, another person who's been guiding me with research for her music, that the second piano concerto was performed during her lifetime, but is has not been performed much since then, and so I'm very interested in discovering that. And yes, I absolutely love her music, and it would be my dream to record them.
Amazing. Quynh, this has just been so great to talk to you about this terrific CD, The Flower of France. The disc is a long time coming. All the best. And I'm hoping it will spur on more of an interest in Germaine Tailleferre's music because it's just fantastic. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. This has been just great.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I it is my hope that I play a small part in getting her music to be more mainstream and to be more recognized and listened to. Um, she certainly composed gorgeous music
Yeah,
that everybody loves.
absolutely. Thanks again.
Thank you.